Hey folks, my name is Dave. Welcome to our shop here at NTD Racing. This is Honcho, our 1978 Jeep J10 race truck. Just got done with Vegas to Reno, and now we're getting ready for the Baja 1000. In this video today, we're doing just about everything. We're welding, designing things on CAD, cutting with the Langmuir Systems CrossFire Pro, and doing a whole bunch of fabrication to get a CBR transmission cooler into Honcho. Before we get to any of that, if you like what you see here today, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button below. It sure helps us out. So why are we doing this? Before we did the Vegas to Reno race, I did a little bit of work myself on the 6L90 transmission and maybe didn't do it just perfectly. When it was all said and done, we didn't have fourth gear for about the first 30 miles. And then once we did get the fourth gear back, we had a little bit of overheating problems. We got up to about 270 degrees. So we're pulling the transmission that is currently in Honcho out. We're gonna put in another transmission that I got on eBay and see how that one works. And we're also going to change the transmission cooler to try to keep those temperatures down and make sure she's ready to go for the Baja 1000. Let's go ahead and get to the fabrication. All right, here's a look at some of the tools and techniques that we use to lift an engine high enough to get it over the roll cage and into Honcho. This is the transmission we just got from eBay. You might recognize the guy in the background there. That's Ryan, one of my neighbors, and also our driver that will be starting the Baja 1000 for us on the, I think it's the 18th of November. Great dude. Really a Swiss Army knife in all things he does in life. And I don't think he was much of an auto mechanic before working on Honcho, but now he's our sheet metal guy. And the guy helps me put engines into Honcho. All right, here's the project today. We're going to go ahead and get to work on the mount for the new trans cooler. This is the old one that we ran in the Vegas to Reno, and it just wasn't enough. While we were climbing hills, we started getting some overheating, so we're going to try to double that with our new CBR trans cooler. You can just tell this thing is massive. It should work good. Anyway, what we had was the trans cooler in here with our battery. I had this tray. This is what made it in the Vegas to Reno, and it worked out pretty good. Protected the transmission. You can see the mesh down there. We're going to build the same kind of thing close to it. Over here, I'll look to mount the battery and the new transmission cooler and maybe spice it up with some other cool little details. Let's go ahead and get to it. We'll start with cutting some tubes and then get on the Fusion 360 and the Langmuir Systems CrossFire Pro to make the side plates. Well, I love talking about tools, and I get asked sometimes, you know, hey, what about a shop tour? What tools do you have in your shop that you really like? And this is hands down my favorite. I've talked about it before. It is my bandsaw. I just find it's really easy to use to get measurements. Now, buying one initially is a little bit pricey. They're about, around $1,000 to buy a bandsaw. But the value of these things is how well and how cleanly they cut. The fact that when they're done cutting, you don't have metal all over your shop, from coming off of the saw. And then also the longevity of the blades cannot be understated. Some of my DeWalt saws, the metal carbide blades, those things go bad after, a couple of weeks or something like that of heavy use. And this thing, I literally built the entire Honcho truck on the same blade that I'm using right now. And they're like 20 or 30 bucks a blade. You just can't beat it. If you're interested in one of those saws or any other tools that you see me using on my videos, please check it out either in the description below or go to www.ntdracing and click on store, and any tool that I use, I put a link for it in that place. Well, I do enjoy TIG welding, but the real reason I think I TIG weld most of the parts is I think about this truck in a race situation, and sometimes I think the difference between the truck breaking down and you spending the night in the desert while you wait for your chase crew or you continue the race might just be that one weld. You don't know where it is, so I usually will try to TIG weld just about everything to make sure I have the highest quality possible weld I can get. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get into the Fusion 360 on this and kind of fumble through while you're watching me, but what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to create 3 different sketches, and when I go to my plasma table, I'm going to cut them out as 3 different sketches. I know that this first thing I want to cut out is going to be 5 inches wide. That's because the holes I'm going to mount that on are going to basically be centered. Get this thing out of the way. They're going to be centered on this tube right here, about 5 inches wide, and that'll minimize how much air restriction I'm giving to the cooler, and also allow me to basically mount this thing on both sides of this tube right here with a plate. So it's going to be 5 inches wide. I'm going to make it 11.5 inches long. Is going to be how long all the plates that are going to be going over this will be today. So start with, I'm going to go to sketch on this plane again. It's the X and Y axis, which you need to use when you're doing the plasma table. And what I like to do is I like to use center rectangles, just because I find that to be a little bit easier. So I'm going to say 5 by, I think I said 11.5. Is that what I said? 11.5 inches. Measure twice, cut once. There we go. And I'm going to say enter. So there is my rectangle. And now what I want to do is basically 1 inch in on either side. I want to make some holes. I'm going to make it a little bit easier on myself. I'm going to go ahead and make some construction lines. And I'm going to make this first construction line right down the center. And the second construction line, hit the L hotkey across the side. And that'll let me do a couple of measurements, but also let me mirror some stuff, which will make it a little bit easier on me later. So I'm going to get in here. I'm going to say, again, a construction line. I'm going to go out to 1 inch. Let's go right in the middle. Let's say 1.3. That looks like a nice place to put, remember. Say 2. And then another line. And say 2. Enter. Now I'm going to hit the C hotkey for circle, and I'm going to go ahead, turn the construction lines off. I'm using 3/8 inch bolts on this, which I usually would use a 0.4, but I might make it just slightly bigger, like a 0.42 hole for that one. And then I'm going to do the same thing one more time over here, make a 0.42, and then I'm going to do one more right here and make a 0.42. And then now I just want to go ahead and make that same thing on the other side. Mirror. That one, that one, that one. I want to mirror it on that line. There we go. Okay, that looks good. Now I want to mirror it again, and I want to do that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. That should be 5 objects, and I'm going to mirror it on that line. Okay, I'm going to extrude that. I always extrude 0.125. Make sure it's going the way I want it. Enter. There's my part. That is part number 1. Let's go ahead and make part number 2. Make a new part. I'm going to sketch it. Again, on the X and Y axis, you should see front over here. Again, I'm going to do a rectangle, a center rectangle. And this one is going to be, again, 11.5, but the width will be, let's just make it 7 1/4. So 7.25 by 11.5. There we go. Now what I'm going to be doing is I need to be able to put my hand in there and reach in underneath there and put in some bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a hole in here. Side, center rectangle, how about right here? Let's make something that looks like that. Let's go ahead and make sure you don't cut your fingers on the edges of this thing. That looks good. I'll go ahead and radius those. That part looks good. I'm gonna hit the hotkey E. No, I want to hit enter. I want to finish that. Hotkey E. There we go. I'm going to extrude. I always turn it sideways so I can see where I'm extruding at 0.125, or if I'm cutting, extrude that part. 0.125. Enter. There we go. That's part number 2. Let's go ahead and make part number 3. This will be the more difficult part to make. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to get the radiator. I'm going to put it in place and where it's going to go. And basically what I want to do is to hold these radiator ends. One of the issues with CBR radiators is they don't really give you, at least I haven't seen any instructions on how to put these things together. So my plan is to put some plates in here, have them come up, and I'm going to have them engage these 3 bolts. So I'll take these bolts out and have them engage those. So first thing I'm going to do this is I just want to know what the size of that plate is going to be. And it looks like if I go 3 1/4, I think we'll just use this as a reference, 3 1/4 by say 18. So 3 1/4 by 18. So I'm going to sketch on that plane. I like this center rectangle again, just because it makes it easy to go back in and use dimensions off of those 0 axes there. All right, so it's going to be, what did I say, 18, 1/8, measure twice, cut 18 by 3.25. Make sure I got that right, 3 1/4. Cool, money. Enter. There is my plate I'm going to make. And now I need to find out how high those bolts are on that plate. Looks like 2.8 is going to be a nice number. So I will draw a line. I'm going to make it a construction line up at 2.8. I'm going to draw another construction line. From the side over, I need to find out what the width is or how far these bolts are apart. And hopefully they made them some kind of nice round number. They look like they did it right at 8 inches. Thank you. So I'll go ahead and make a line over here straight across at 8 inches. And then make another one straight across at 8 inches. All right. Now, how big are those circles going to be? Let's go ahead and take out one of those bolts really quickly and figure out what the diameter is of that bolt. Got that out of there. There's a nutsert inside there that they use, and make sure this is zeroed out. And I'm showing it's about 0.23. You know, just because what's really important is I also want to compress it in there, and I want to just keep it from falling out. It doesn't have to be perfect. So, but I also want to give myself the ability to have some slop. So I'm going to go with a 0.3 hole. So I'm going to go and take off construction lines. I'm going to say 0.3, enter, center over here, 0.3, enter, center over here, and say 0.3, enter. There we go. Now I'm just going to make this thing, so that plate is ready to go. I'm just going to make it a little bit more friendly. So I'm going to just put some radiuses on the corners over here. I'll do the same on both sides. That looks good. And then I kind of want to make it personalized, so I'm going to put my logo on here. We're going to put NTD Racing on there. Before I do that, I like to extrude it first. So we're going to go ahead and hit the hotkey E to extrude it. I'm going to pick this part, and then we're going to extrude it to 0.125. There, that's the 1/8 inch plate steel, which I'll be cutting this into. Now I got that part. Now I want to put some cool stuff in here. So I'm going to sketch again. I want to sketch right on the face of this thing. And what I'll normally do when I sketch is I'm going to pick a line and I hit the construction lines. I kind of wanted to sketch right along this line right here. And I am going to hit create text, and I wanted to draw along that line right there. Once it has that, the font that I like to use is Stencil A, and I have that up there. And I just want to put in, I'm going to delete all their words and put NTD. And let's go about 2 inches tall for that lettering. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to center that over here. And now let's see if we can extrude NTD. So for the extrusion, what I want to do is I don't want a new body. I actually want to cut it, and I wanted to cut through the length of the full plate. There we go. So I got that one. Now what I want to do is I want to put racing in there. And I want it to be slightly smaller so you can kind of tell it's NTD than racing, but it's going to be the same font because it's a stencil, and I find that Stencil A does work the best. So I'm going to go ahead and create a sketch again. And once again, I'm going to hit the hotkey L and make a construction line slightly out of plane with that one. And then I'm going to go over here and create text. And I'll turn off construction lines just in case. I'm not sure if it really does matter, but I'm going to draw it along that line. I'm going to type in the word racing. Racing. And let's go at 1.5 inches tall. We should be able to move this around so it looks the way we want it to. How about that? Boom. And then I'm going to extrude racing from this thing. I'm going to go cut, and I'm going to cut it out. There we go. Okay. Check that out. I think that'll be pretty trick on the side of that plate there, and we'll cut one for both sides. There we go. So since we're going to cut one for both sides, you know what? I'm going to cut one at a time just because I don't know how it'll nest. And if I don't know exactly how I'm going to nest it, I'm just going to cut one at a time and then reset the machine and cut another one. Let's go ahead and do that. So you'll find that with the stenciling, sometimes it doesn't make the G code or just won't make the cut lines for you. So let's make sure it'll do that. We're going to go out of design into manufacturing. We're going to go to setup, and I'm going to be cutting. And for this one, it's just one part, so I should just be able to say, cut it right there. I'm not going to hit any of those buttons, but I'm going to say this is the NTD side plate. All right. And then I'm going to go to cutting. So let's go to fabrication, cutting. We're going to select the Razor Weld 45. I've been using this plasma torch forever now, and I just as I was doing that order for the XR, I consider not going with a 45. I'm going with a 45 again. It's going to save me about $2,000, and I just think you can't beat it. I was cutting in 1/8 inch plate still, so I'm going to cut it about 65. I'm going to let my my lead ins be at 50. I don't do a lead out, but I put it in there anyway just because I'm going to cut this part right here. I need to make sure it says in computer, and then leave that unchecked. Sweep. That should be, I'm going to say 0.1 is what I like to use there. I'm going to turn off the lead outs, and I want it to start right there for the cut. And let's see if it makes the whole tool path. It sure does. And you can see if you go to simulation, you can go ahead and watch it do the full mill deal. I'm going to turn the speed up a little bit so you see the whole thing. Killer. So, all right. The G code. Now the post-processing looks slightly different than it used to look. Just the way they display it, but you're still post-processing in your fire control, and it has all the parameters over here. Here's the name of the thing you're making. And then I got to figure it out how to make my plasma cutting folder, the default folder, because right now I'm going in here and selecting this every time, which I think it saves a little time if I don't have to go through this whole rigmarole to get that in there. But anyway, I'll select that folder, post-process it. Let's go ahead and take it over to the Fusion 3, over to Fire Control now, and the Langmuir Systems CrossFire Pro, and get these parts cut out. Of all the tools that I have in my garage, the Langmuir Systems CrossFire Pro is definitely the biggest game changer. It is the one that I think allowed me to build going from nothing to having a race-ready truck in 10 months. And I think with some really quality parts that were made in my own shop. I think that was made possible because I have this plasma cutting table system. You can have one for yourself in your own garage. The Langmuir Systems, the CrossFire Pro, shipped with the plasma cutter, everything in my garage working. It was just a little bit over $4,000, and I have a lot of videos showing you how I put it together and how I put that to use. And now they have the Langmuir Systems CrossFire XR coming out. I think it's going to be totally a game changer. If you're interested in any of these tables, please click on my link. It'll get you a discount about $100 on the table when you purchase it, and also I am an affiliate with Langmuir Systems, so it also helps me out, and I do appreciate that. But super cool table, and I can't wait to show you how I put the XR together. It should be showing up in my garage here pretty soon. All right, we're getting to the end of the fabrication of this transmission mount. I'm using these cards here just to put in between so that when I'm done welding these plates on there, I can slide that transmission cooler back out. Again, I said I don't like MIG welding, but I do it sometimes just to practice or in areas where I think it's pretty low consequence. And you know, a good MIG weld should be just as good as a good TIG weld, but again, I like to TIG weld. So I'm gonna go ahead. First, I lay down a couple of tack welds, which I think works really well with the TIG welder because you can get some really small tack welds on there. Another thing I did is I marked off every 2 inches along this plate that I'm going to weld on there, and I'm just going to do a stitch weld. So I'm only going to weld 2 inches, skip 2 inches, weld 2 inches, skip 2 inches. I think it's a pretty good look, and it just isn't required to, I think, weld that whole thing. All right, to finish this thing up here, I'm just going to use some tin snips to cut some of this mesh out. And once I fit it up into place, really all it needs is just a couple tack welds with a MIG welder. It holds that thing in place. So whether you're making this thing to protect your radiator from rocks, or if you're just making a barbecue grill outside, this stuff is pretty easy to work with. And just a couple tack welds and that thing won't come off. And the finishing touches for this whole job, and probably one of my favorite parts of this, is my 7-year-old's going to do the painting on this. And check out the spray paint shooting technique from this guy. He's getting to be pretty good at shooting a light coat and coming back around on a second pass and making it look really good. Check it out.
Look good?
Nice. All right, check it out. This is with the CBR transcooler. It looks like now in this freshly painted mount. I think it really makes that NTD Racing pop on there. Looks really cool. Got the battery mount right there. This is all going to go together. Just drop right in the back of the truck. We had to drill a couple holes, bolt this thing up, and we should be driving Honcho tomorrow. Let's go ahead and get it into the truck. Well, it is always a relief when you get a transmission or a new part into a car and it works the first time. So I'm really happy about this transmission that we got on eBay. We're going to go ahead and take it out to the Anza-Borrego Desert and really put it through the paces, all speeds, all kinds of terrain, make sure that it shifts gears and it also will maintain temperature out there. What's coming up next? We've got the CrossFire XR. I think it's showing up sometime next week. I'll have all the videos on that. And putting that thing to use, especially as we start the build of the next truck, where we're going to take all the lessons we learned while building Honcho to build a better, faster truck, maybe for a little bit less dollars. Anyways, look forward to showing you all that stuff. We'll see you next week. Take care of yourself.